I am originally from San Diego. I've been in the Bay Area for about 2.5 years now. I was working primarily as an actor, and I've made the full transition into a new director. I'll be directing Rachel, the reading with South Bay Musical Theater. And thank you again, Sara. I'm so excited. And thank you all for joining us tonight.
We are looking forward to Rachel. That'll be our January E-Readers Theater production. So, and audition information is coming out on that with hopefully soon, next couple weeks. All right, Leanne.
Hi, I'm Ann Payne. I've worked at South Bay Musical Theater for a few seasons. I'm a director choreographer, and I'm also a equity actor. I love South Bay Musical Theater, and I love this conversation that we're about to have. I think it's a really important one, and I'm really excited to see how we can all benefit from some great discussion.
Thank you, Leanne. Leanne was supposed to direct our South Pacific, which got paused. But timely. One of the things that we wanted to focus on with that show was the themes of race that's inherent in that show as well. All right, moving on to Gary Stanford Jr.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Sara. I am Bay Area born and raised. I've been performing since I was a child, and I've been doing theater since high school, acting and directing and choreographing, and excited to be here and have been having this discussion for a number of months now. So it's great to have this forum and platform to discuss with a larger panel, a larger group. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Gary is also on our artistic or our vision and long range planning team and has been advising a lot with staffing and kind of keeping that ball rolling. So thank you, Gary. And Nicole.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Tung. I am also born and raised in the Bay Area, equity actress and director and choreographer. I was supposed to choreograph Allegiance, and that got put on hold, and Palo Alto Players as well. So hopefully we'll get back to that. I also had the pleasure of directing Almost Maine for South Bay Musical Theater, which was a blast on Zoom. And yeah, so I'm really, really excited to be a part of this conversation because I think it's time that we had a conversation like this to move things forward in a different direction. So thanks, Sara, for putting it together.
Thank you, Nicole. And did you mention that she also was supposed to choreograph King and I for us this coming season, which also is on hold. So all these things that you guys have to look forward to at some point.
Yay!
So yeah, thank you all for joining me tonight. South Bay Musical Theater has obviously we're on hiatus along with every other theater in the country, but one of the blessings of this hiatus is that it's given us a chance to really further develop a lot of conversations that we've been wanting to have. That when you're running a theater company with a single staff member and a massive amount of volunteers, there's just not a lot of time for this luxury to sit down and have these conversations. So it's one of the ways that we're very blessed. Our equity and diversity and inclusion conversations really started happening about a year and a half ago and kicked into high gear in June with Black Lives Matter movement. But the things that had already started to be in play were turbo speed, if you will. I mean, we've got this time to have these conversations. So one of the priorities in our current mode is that making sure that when we're producing e-studio content that we are showing a diverse range of performers and voices, and really trying to show what our community, how to represent our community well. Tonight's conversation will definitely be how we take what SBMT is known for, which is kind of traditional classical musicals, if you will. Not to say that we wouldn't do something recent, but we are known for well-produced traditional. A lot of these classic musicals from the 1950s, the 1960s run into racial stereotypes that were considered okay back then, and now it's very much prominent that these are something needs to be changed. In tonight's discussion, just kind of overall, and for our people that are watching, I invite you, we might misspeak. I know I'm doing my best and I'm learning. So please, 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 if there's something that I inadvertently say that, or any of us that is in any way offensive, please type into the chat and just correct. Is totally welcomed and appreciated. And I would love that. My cats are definitely making a debut tonight. We're so grateful. What else can I know, hang on. My brain just went, there's the cat. Okay. So our conversation was really inspired by the website Broadway Refocused. They did a highlight of the recent Oklahomas, both the current Broadway, or the one that was currently on Broadway with ableist Ado Annie, as well as Oregon Shakespeare Company that did, or Oregon Shakespeare Theater that did Oklahoma a couple of years ago, where they gender swapped the couples, and I thought that was a very interesting way. Growing up I was able to go to New York for college, and in the late '90s, I had the pleasure of being able to see Whoopi Goldberg play Pseudolus in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and then Audra McDonald in Carousel as Carrie. And so in thinking back on that during this, during the prep time for this conversation, it really struck me at how those specific moments helped normalize, in my mind, that anybody can play any role. So how do we take that knowledge and apply it to our standard musicals that we're seeing today? What can we do that's new, that's different? We've seen a lot of great work represented this way throughout the Bay Area, including 1776, recently done by Tabard Theater. They did an all-female cast that was directed by Diane Milo and had a number of our performers as SBMT in that production. The other one, and I'll share a picture of this, if I can do this easily, is the Jesus Christ Superstar that was from Ray of Light Theater in San Francisco, where they took the entire cast of Jesus Christ Superstar, flipped it, gender swapped, and all of the roles were played by female. Ray of Light, that I reached out to them for just, did they have a little bit of feedback on their production themselves? And they wrote back with, at Ray of Light Theater, it's always been our vision to challenge and change our audiences, and we're not afraid of making people uncomfortable to drive home a point. Given our show history, much of our audience support our vision, which is why it made complete sense to present Jesus Christ Superstar as an all-female cast. It's why it's vital to embrace diverse perspectives, gender, ethnicity, and age, etc. in classic works, because you're able to tap into some pretty incredible stories that might be unseen. They found that this all-female approach gave us a fresh dynamic filled with more nuance and electricity that we found in previously male-led productions. So just a thank you and a shout out to Ray of Light. What we've talked about too is with our panelists is how this is going to change our vision, and how do you normalize and for lack of a better word, inclusive, non-traditional casting or inclusive casting. How do we make that the next normal, right? So to start us off, I know I can waffle. To start us off, I'm going to turn things over to Tanika, who, and I will let her, I'm going to share my screen again so that you can see what she has chosen.
So yes, thank you, Sarah. When you emailed me about this conversation, and you said, think of one or two musicals, guys, I'm just going to be very transparent. I love Disney Plus. I went on Disney Plus. The Sound of Music and Hello Dolly are the two classical musicals that are on there. And I picked The Sound of Music because I love The Sound of Music. Who doesn't? Before I get into it, I'd like to actually just give a quick synopsis, because sometimes I think people think, oh yeah, I know The Sound of Music, and it's okay if you don't. We won't call you out, even though you should, because it's excellent. Okay, so courtesy of stageagent.com, the final collaboration between Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein II, The Sound of Music has become a play beloved around the world. Based on the true story of the Von Trapp family singers, this play captures a personal tale of growth and hope amidst the horrors of World War II. The Sound of Music tells the tale of a young postulant, Maria Rainer, whose free spirit has trouble fitting into the rules and regulations of the Nonnberg Abbey. Commissioned by the Mother Abbess to serve as the governess for 7 motherless children, Maria transforms the Von Trapp family home from a place of dour rules and regulations to one filled with joy, with laughter, and with music. In the process, Maria wins the hearts of all the 7 children, and their widower father, Captain Von Trapp. With the Mother Abbess's blessing and to the children's delight, Maria follows her heart, and Maria and the captain marry. Upon returning home from their honeymoon, Maria and the captain learn that their beloved Austria has been taken over by the Nazis, and the retired captain is asked to report for immediate service in the Nazi Navy. When the Nazis show up at the door to take Captain Von Trapp away, it is a family singing engagement wildly navigated by their friend Max that buys the family time to make their narrow escape. Their Austrian convictions compel Maria, the captain, and the children to flee over the mountains of Switzerland to safety, taking the words of the Mother Abbess to heart: climb every mountain till you find your dream. And so I climbed every mountain. I went searched the script. I was like, okay, where does it say that this character has to look this particular specific way? I could not find it. I climbed all the mountains in the script, y'all. I didn't find it. I went on different boards. I think I was on Broadway World, and I was like, can Maria be this Black? Can Maria be this? There was so many commentary speaking as to why she needed to be European descendant, white. But again, nowhere in the script does it call for her to look the certain way. None of the characters. The character breakdowns actually talk about who they are, their essence, of the types of people they are. I looked up, are there Austrian Black people, or are there Austrian this type of people? I found this amazing article. There was a scholar's dissertation, and it was talking about slaves who existed in 17th and 18th century in Austria. There were Black folks in Austria. We know this. We know this as intellectual theater practitioners. We know that there is not one type of racial ethnicity amongst the whole globe anywhere. Anywhere. Sound of Music has been produced all over the world. Any country that you can think of right now within 5 seconds, it's probably been produced there. And the people that live there look like we do on the screen right now. That's the diversity that there is. So again, this rationale as to you have to produce this show this way because it takes place in Austria and there were no other people in Austria. That's a lie. That's just a blatant lie. And I think at this point in 2020, going into 2021, when you are casting a show and you're subscribing to traditional models of the same casting, you are making a conscious choice to participate in this whitewashing or this normalizing of a racist structure that we are supposed to be the beacons of humanity. We are artisans. We are supposed to lead the charge. And I think it's really lazy. I think it's not imaginative. I think you lack creativity when you do not, when you go into things and your casting personnel look a certain way, your artistic team looks a certain way. It's like diversify the portfolio, folks. We have to. There's nowhere in America or in the entire globe where folks are just one type of people. And The Sound of Music touches on so many different things: family, patriotism, feminism, masculinity. We have to open ourselves up, and we expect our society to be free and equal and loving and accepting of you as an individual. And if you are saying to folks, no, the Sound of Music has to look this certain way because it's taking place in Austria, and it's not, first of all, it's an adaptation of a book by the actual Maria. She was an orphan. She didn't even want to marry the captain. She was forced to. She actually really did want to be a nun. She did. She grew up in a very abusive home. Her mother died while she was very young. She grew up, her uncle abused her. There was a lot of mental health issues with him. And so he would punish her just because. For the Sound of Music as it is as a musical is not even correct. So get that out.
It is. So when Tanika, when you picked that, it made my eyes light up because one of the secrets of last year was that we had originally hoped to do The Sound of Music, directed by Clea Davis, who is now up at Bay Area Children's Theater as their artistic director and is a fabulous, fabulous talent. But one of the things that was very important to us was that to have a diverse family up there to be seen, to be shown. What kind of one of the things that I've been thinking about is what sort of extra dynamic do you think it adds as Maria as a person of color in her relationships, maybe with the abbey, with the nuns, with the mother abbess, and escaping that? I kind of that question popped into my mind.
Right. Well, immediately, because Maria is coming into the family dynamic in a subservient role, I'm kind of paused to change her ethnicity, only because we're so used to seeing people of color in service. So I would be more interested in seeing the captain as a person of color, perhaps as a woman. I'd be more interested in that dynamic. Yeah, and Maria can be any ethnicity. Don't get me wrong. She can stay white. She can be whatever. But I think, even with the butlers and the female butler, like, it's just, I'm coming into it as an actor, and I know that I'm more so going to be seen more as a servant than I will be seen as a person with agency. And so, I don't want to downplay just because she came in as a governess, that is a lower role, but we have to be careful with that as well, because I know people are more comfortable. Like, I live in Berkeley, and everywhere I look, I see a bunch of Black folks who are cleaning the streets. Like, people are comfortable seeing us in these positions. So I'd be more interested in giving a person of color agency as the captain, because the captain is the person who has the power. It controls the dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah. Right. That is an excellent point. That, one of those things that didn't even cross the mind, but a beautiful point. You touched a little bit on what would happen if Captain Von Trapp was female. What if their relationship was the same-sex couple?
Yeah, and it, immediately it makes me think of Devil Wears Prada, because Captain's blowing the whistle and they're coming down. Everybody's, got such anxiety. But yeah, and then it's like, okay, so is this a genderqueer story? Does it turn into that? Or does it turn into how Frozen was, where it was about the love of the two sisters? So it could be the love of two women just helping each other out during this annexation of Austria to Germany. Like, how do we survive this? And I don't know if we can technically do that yet with The Sound of Music. I don't know if it's reached the centuries. I don't think it has yet. But when it does, oh, heck yeah, I would love to adapt it and change it up and switch it from a romantic love to maybe just a sister bond, or women supporting women, and, children, helping children navigate. Like, because right now we are literally in a similar situation. Yeah. So, yeah.
I thought that was interesting too, of just feeling like partnerships, as opposed to a romantic, romantic love, especially years ago. Love was overrated. it was partnerships. I think, you know, one of the benefits of having different ethnicities in these characters is just to make that the new normal. You know, you can absolutely say that most likely they would not be in this situation, but they could be, and especially now, there's no reason why it shouldn't be represented that way. Representation truly does matter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we have so much, we have power. We can make choices. You
right.
know, it's our decision, you know, from down from the director to the lighting designer to the choreographer to the costumer. We have so many choices. It doesn't just stop at the casting. It's a broad spectrum. So
Absolutely.
I think we, you know, going into the next year, I'm so excited to work as a director now, because for so long I felt like, man, I would just do this, or maybe what would that look like? And now I can make those choices and ask questions and like think outside the box. You know, like when you're copying the same formula, you're really not exercising your creativity. You're doing something that you've already seen. So how do you learn something new? You really don't. So, you
Right.
know.
Awesome. Thank you. That is wonderfully laid out, and I truly appreciate that. Yeah. Down in the chat is the Nazis targeted homosexuality as well as the Jews and etc. And yeah, that would add a totally different twist of intensity to that role as well. Cool. Thank you. I'm going to move over to Leanne will be up next. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for her musical of choice.
Guys and Dolls.
Guys and Dolls.
Well, there's a couple of things. I'll just do a quick. Most people know kind of the general sense of Guys and Dolls, and I agree with Tanika. If you don't know that, you should go look. But it's basically it's a bet. The whole thing is premised on a bet to get some money to do a gambling. It's gamblers in the 50s in New York City, and Nathan Detroit basically bets Sky Masterson $1,000 if he can get, or Sky, excuse me, that Sky can get a date with Sarah Brown, who is a member of the Save the Soul mission. And hijinks ensue. In the middle of this, there's also a showgirl and a bunch of gamblers and a mission, and it's a fairly simple plot. It's considered to be one of the more perfect books of a musical. It could stand alone without the music. It's widely considered one of the best books of the musical. So my take on that, or my thought process, or my thought exercise, was, first of all, in most of the time that I've seen Guys and Dolls, it's been a predominantly white cast, which makes no sense to me because it takes place in New York City.
Right.
So I don't have to even have a thought exercise why that should not be a completely diverse cast. My goodness, it's the 50s in New York City. So right off the bat, I think we need to really consider how we cast all the roles, every single one of the roles in Guys and Dolls. There is no excuse for us not to be seeking out diversity in that casting. We don't have to suspend disbelief. We don't have to think about the old ways. We don't have to do anything. 50s New York City. So that's kind of a fairly straightforward one. However, my thought exercise was to make Sky Masterson a woman. I've worked with I've choreographed a piece that had Nicely Nicely as a woman, and I always have thought that Big Julie should be a very short woman. And there's also Angie the Ox, so they all have these great names, and so you could develop some other options there. I don't think we need to deal with gender for the majority of the gamblers. There's no need for us to make them all men. But the thought exercise of making Sky Masterson a woman, it kind of revolves around, I mean, the title itself is Guys and Dolls. So you've kind of set up a gender issue right off the bat, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean that a guy has to be a man. Why can't a guy be a gambler? Or why can't a guy be whatever that kind of social construct is of the guys who talk like that? You know, that kind of Brooklyn talk that they all had. So so it comes into sort of an interesting exercise when you look at the relationship between Sky Masterson and Sara Brown. I think today's audiences would be much more accepting of that combination than they probably would have, you know, certainly years ago. But now I think there's a dynamic between Sky and Sara that's always, that Sara just didn't want to like him, or didn't want to like Sky, excuse me, just wanted to keep pushing that relationship away. And I think there's an interesting dynamic of, in the 50s, a woman being able to consider the consequences of that moment in the 50s. You know, the first time they meet, they kiss, and Sara Brown slaps Sky Masterson and tries to deny what the relationship. Obviously, by the end, they do end up together. But there's also a lovely, Sara Brown's father also sings a lovely song called More I Cannot Wish You, which is about accepting that love is most important. And so there's a lot to be said about making Sky perhaps a woman, and Luck Be a Lady works. Right? Luck Be a Lady works. If you think of a guy, instead of making it a gender and making it kind of a way of life, and you know, you can do a lot of things that would still let this musical hold together. Mm-hmm. I just looked through all the music, and you know, the only thing you are going to ever have an issue with is voicing. From a musical director standpoint, there's voicing issues, but the story could hold together. So that was my exercise.
I that too also made my eyes light up, and like, I think my first comment was, please, let's do that. I personally also would like to say, as a baritone, that I'm all for playing Sky. I'm there. Finally, something in my range. So I really do think that it is a fascinating path to go down, especially as you look at the time period and the constraints on being open in your homosexuality at that age, during that time period would be. Correct. As well as you've got this very religious father-daughter of Arvid.
Right.
Sara's relationship. One of the questions that kind of popped into my mind is, what sort of, and I'm throwing this at you, so I do apologize.
Oh, I'm ready.
What sort of background would you have given Sky and Sara? Was this something that was love at first sight, or?
Yeah, you know, I would definitely, I mean, the I'll Know When My Love Comes Along is the first song that Sara sings, and she sings it to him. To her, to Sky, sorry, I'll work through that. Sings it to Sky, and Sky sings back about that same kind of process, and that's what brings them together. And they have a different way of seeing how to fall in love, and that's kind of the essence of the guy versus the doll. It doesn't have to be gender. It's a way of looking at the world. And so I think they share something. And I don't think it has to be, you know, it doesn't have to be defined by gender. It's an interesting thought process. And again, if you continue to keep using women and men as gamblers, as this kind of underbelly of the world, then you don't have, you know, if it was just Sky was a woman, then I think then you're kind of pointing a big arrow at it. If Sky's a woman and Big Julie's a woman, and all of a sudden you've got this kind of whole group, and they're not all white, then you just everything starts to make a little bit more sense in that respect. So I think you have to be bold. You can't just go, let's just do one thing. You got to be bold. You got to just push the whole thing, because, and Tanika is very passionate about this as well, because just do it. Don't think about it. Just, we want to see the best of us, and that's a myriad of representation. So I don't think it doesn't diminish anything, it enhances it. So, but don't do one. Just don't go, I'm just going to put one person in. That's crazy. You go. And
embrace it. And there was also, I think when we spoke earlier this week, it was, being able to see that sort of relationship as not a highlight, it can just be natural as part of the narrative, as part of the story. And it's not a big deal. And they're two people who met, and they go on this adventure and they fall in love. And isn't that lovely? It doesn't matter.
They both struggle with it, because Sky doesn't necessarily want Sara, that messes up the plan, and Sara doesn't want Sky because that messes up the plan. So there's so much subtextual issues associated with that. Now you put on top of it a time period where this is much more difficult to be out in the open about. I think it's an interesting concept. But again, it can't just be one thing. It's got to be all things, because it has more relevance. Then it's not just, again, it's not an arrow pointing, it's a relevance to the whole. So
anyway, thank you. That was, can't wait.
And there's really good dancing in it. So
there's really good dancing in it. And yay. I laugh. Most of you don't know me, but when I performed, I was typically, growing up, always cast as the old man in the show. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm coming into my own. I was cast as Arvid in Guys and Dolls. I was, so I'm like, all right, I can play. Yay, finally. The world's coming up to my level. All right, we're going to move on to Nicole, and she will talk a little bit about her piece.
Yes, Miss Saigon, which I think, like these other ones, I think most people know the show. On the off chance that you don't, or you don't know the history behind it, it is based on Puccini's opera, Madame Butterfly, but it is this tragic love story about an Asian girl who happens, in this particular case, it's set in the Vietnam War. So you have the American GI who falls in love with this Vietnamese girl who is forced into prostitution by this character called the engineer. They fall in love, and then Chris, the GI, tries to pull Kim out of Vietnam with him when he leaves, but she ends up getting left behind. Not to spoil any story for anybody, but surprise, they end up having a kid. So that kind of throws a wrench into the whole situation. It makes things a lot more complicated. At the same time, Kim is supposed to get married to, she's not supposed to get married to this GI. Her cousin, Tui, comes in and gives her a hard time about being connected and how she should be with him. In the meantime, Chris goes back to the US, can't find Kim. He ends up actually marrying a girl named Ellen instead. And down the road, his friend John, who is also a fellow GI with him, ends up finding Kim, and they try to reunite and repair things. So that's the general synopsis of the show. So the history behind this is that I think for a lot of Asian performers, there was a lot of excitement of being able to see themselves on stage. However, because the story was written by two white European men, it is written from the white male perspective. So there is this whole struggle of wanting to support the show and enjoy the show as an Asian performer, but it's also not painting the Vietnamese people in the greatest light and not putting them in the strongest positions in the show. It's still very much built as this white savior situation with the American GI coming in to save the Vietnamese girl who is painted as being very helpless on her own. The other issue was that when the show first went up, it was premiered in 1989 in the West End in London. The engineer was Jonathan Pryce, who, if you don't know him, he is a white actor. And because it was 1989, he was okayed to be in yellowface. So he actually had prosthetics on his face to make himself look mixed race Asian. Obviously, there were huge issues with that, and there were people who had huge problems with it, but he did it anyway. And it turned out to be a very successful run, actually, because it was just a fantastic show with some really talented people. It was Lea Salonga's launching pad into being a superstar. So it stopped at the West End, and the plan was to come to Broadway. So a number of Equity actors wrote to Equity because when a production and when a performer comes over, they have to have a work visa okayed by Equity. So the Equity Union received these letters from these actors saying, please do not let Jonathan Pryce come over and perform as the engineer because it is offensive. And so initially, Equity actually said, okay, no, we're not going to okay that visa. And then it turns out the mayor of New York at the time really wanted to see the show happen. And so a few days later, Equity rescinded the decision and they let Jonathan Pryce come over. So that, right, big no-no. So, but thankfully, since that, there has never been another Caucasian actor playing the engineer. It's always been an Asian male, which is fantastic. And there have been some phenomenal performers who have played those roles. But I felt like it's time to shift that a little bit for the show in general, just to ideally bring a little more strength to the Asian characters, to give Asian performers a chance to play a more positive role in the show, but to also change things around, make it a little interesting. So my thought was for the engineer, to make the engineer female instead of male, to change that dynamic of the, male dominance in Asian culture and have it be this female who is now, taking advantage of the fact that now she's the one who's actually pimping out these women. She's the madam. It's no longer the male pimp who's handling this situation. Because in the show, during American Dream, the engineer sings about how, as a child, their job was to bring red messieurs to the huts. So the engineer would actually see their mother taking these men into her bed. And so my thought was, what if it's a girl, young girl watching this happen and going, that's not going to be me. I'm changing this, that I'm never going to be in the same situation as my mom. But at the same time, there's the struggle of like, does she continue to help herself? And, in which case she's not helping these other women, or should she be also helping her sisters at the same time, knowing what they're going through? So there's that. And then I thought for Chris, the American GI, there's no reason that Chris has to be white. There really isn't. I mean, in the Vietnam War, the American GIs were a mix of everybody. So in fact, I even looked up what the numbers were, and it was predominantly white males, but Black, Latino, Asian, Native American, like everybody was over there fighting in the war. So we could actually pull anybody, but my thought was to have a Black male play the position of Chris, play the role of Chris, because it would be nice to have a romantic lead who is a Black man, would be really lovely against Kim, because Kim does have to be a Vietnamese female in this position because of the story and where the location is. But I feel like it would even out the playing field a little bit. It's not so much the white savior coming in, it's more them saving each other from this awful place that they're both in that they don't want to be in. So Chris would ideally be played by a Black actor. I would love for Ellen, Chris's wife, to be an Asian female. Traditionally, she is played by a white female. But I will say, I will fully admit, this is not my original brilliant idea because there was a woman named Margaret Ann Gates, who was actually the first Asian female to play Ellen, I believe on a tour. And she says that when she was playing the role, people were all confused in the audience. They were like, she's American. Like, why is she an Asian woman? She's like, because Asians are also American. So it was, but people were surprised and they were confused. But to me, it makes so much more sense for Ellen to be Asian, because then when she finds out about Kim, then it makes her question, like, well, did you marry me for me, or did you marry me because you were thinking of her? And when Kim meets Ellen, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Is this why you didn't come to look for me? Because you found a replacement for me. So that's a whole different dynamic, I think, that would be really interesting to look into. And my other thought actually was that John, the other GI, Chris's friend, these days, traditionally, he's now cast as a Black actor. So again, it's the Black actor playing the supporting character and the white actor playing the lead. And I would like to either flip it around or even just keep John as any ethnicity under the sun. But specifically, I think if he's Black, he would have a very special bond with Chris, because most likely they would have gone through this, experiencing the same racism in the military together. And if he was Asian, then that's another positive role for an Asian male to play in the show, because he's Asian American, he goes to Vietnam, he sees what happens to these people and the awful plight that they're in. When he comes back and they're singing "We Joy" in the second act, he is working extra hard to bring these kids together with, wherever their parents are. So I think it would be nice to change that up, because we can't rewrite the entire story. But those would be the ways, I think, to shift that story into a more positive light for Asian Americans to feel a little more pride if they're going to do the show.
Thank you. That is the chat if is all for it. There. Yeah, make it so. So just very interesting. I too thought about that the dynamic of having Chris and John in particular being that the best friend. How that Black actors were shown in film and in TV throughout the years as never the lead, but always as the side. It also, and we're going to talk about America idealized in the next segment, but it definitely shows that if Ellen is a blonde white woman, that's that housewife ideal.
Right.
And I find that a very intriguing way to shift the focus. So thank you. I think all of those relationships do get a second look in the way that you're describing them. So thank you. Yeah, you did touch on most everything that I was going to ask. So,
I was trying to be thorough.
Yeah, I know. Good job. Well done. So one of the questions, and there's nothing to say that Jonathan Pryce wasn't. He is a phenomenal actor.
Yes.
But what we're seeing, and I actually have just some stats. This is a little slide that I put together earlier. This is actually from the Asian American Performers Action Coalition puts out a Broadway ethnicities throughout what is in New York right now. So I thought this was really interesting. This is actually from the season 2017 to 2018. I have not seen anything more recent than that. But this was the year that The Band's Visit won. Hamilton was on Broadway. So what we're kind of talking about is here in the New York, who gets seen, it's 61% of the performers in New York are white. 38.5% are BIPOC. And then I've listed out underneath what is each further in that BIPOC representation, what is further. Mina was new to me, and so I figured I would share. That is Mina is Middle East and North Africa. That acronym was new to me. So the one thing that this points out too is only 20% of the available roles were cast with BIPOC actors without regards to race. So, even in the roles available, they're predominantly going to white performers. So, to have somebody play the engineer who is just not representative of that culture, it diminishes the value of that, that ethnicity, I guess, is the best way that I can say it. So it absolutely should. Now you look at a show like Hamilton, their point is in particular to make it so that anybody can play any of these roles without commentary.
Well, and what's interesting is that, at the time when when Miss Saigon was coming from London to New York, the writers and the producer, Macintosh, they were completely floored that people had a problem with Jonathan Pryce playing the role and that they were trying to stop him from coming, to the point where Macintosh actually said, you know what, if they're going to have a problem with it, let's just not bring the whole show over, because I don't want to bring it over unless that cast is coming with the show.
Right.
So he didn't even understand what the issue was. And I think, even with the revival, because it was still the same people involved, they wanted to keep it as close to the original casting as possible. So, and they searched high and low for everybody for a very long time, for like over a year. They were holding auditions for everybody under the sun to find the exact right cast they were looking for. And it took them a long time to figure out who they wanted, but also to adjust to honoring everything that should be in the show, like the marriage blessing that the girls sing, Dieu voyez. The original lyrics are gibberish. They're not actual words. They were just sounds and phrases that they had sort of picked up when they were trying to understand the language, and it just phonetically sounded good to them. Right. So they didn't even go in and fix it until the revival, when one of the cast members, Christopher Vo, who is Vietnamese American, he said, hey, I would love to help you rewrite that to where it's actually something that makes sense. And they finally allowed him to do it. But it didn't happen until the revival, because he stepped forward to say, hey, this doesn't mean anything. Can we please make it something that makes sense? Because now you can't get away with whatever you did in 1989.
Yeah, advocating is huge. I just want to point out, and then I'll stop. I will share this link to this report, which is like a 90-page document, but fascinating. And they have pretty graphs, and I couldn't do that today. But the New York City directors, to me, is shocking. That's, what we've been talking about is that this does trickle down from the top, and, diversity in directors would. Lovely. We're aiming. We're aiming. Okay, so Gary is up next, and you took not just one, but here we will. Oh, I have to share my screen again. Take it away.
All right. Yes, I had a whole handful of shows, and thanks, Sarah, for having wonderful visuals. Yes, so I decided to take a few steps into the wide world of Midwestern cowboys, farmers. There's so many shows that kind of cover this time period of the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s into the 1900s. And obviously some of these, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, The Music Man, Oklahoma, Meet Me in St. Louis. And these really hit home to me just because I've been studying so much in the last number of years about Black cowboys, Black farmers, Black towns all over the country during this time period. So it really resonated with me as to why in the world are we assuming or making all these assumptions and cast designs of them being all white. It didn't make sense to me, other than the fact that we are clearly whitewashing these stories. That's the only thing I could come up with. And if you look into history even deeper, you'll find that some of our first cowboys and farmers were Black, and they had been farming cotton for generations as slaves. They had been obviously harvesting crop, but they had been working on plantations, with horses and farm animals and all of that. They were the experts, right? They were the ones doing the work. So as slavery ended and Jim Crow spun up, there was lots of migration from the southern states up the Mississippi to St. Louis and over to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and so on and so forth. You'll find like 50, 60 different towns all over the country were Black towns, and they were thriving as business owners. They had their own banks, they had their own society, right? Living in Jim Crow. So in essence, they're living these lives parallel to the white communities, right? In fact, they're thriving so much to a point that the Red Summer had to happen, that they were just becoming too predominant as being great Americans. So throw all that history into it, and you'll find that these storylines in many of these shows could easily be all Black. It could be an all Black cast. It could be a Black Curly. It could be a Black, any of these characters. Pick a character, right? Pick a storyline. All the same things were happening in these Black towns. So from what I see, what happened in terms of media, in terms of representation, you look at all the old black and white movies that represent cowboys. You have Indians that look absolutely ridiculous and saying gibberish. So they're not even represented correctly, right? And then you move into the 1950s, 60s cowboys and Indian movies, and you have all white cowboys, represented in black and white, and your first color TV movies, one after another. John Wayne, Tony Curtis, on and on and on, the big cowboy stars. So that leading into all of these humongous shows being developed in the 1950s, they kind of correlated, right? And did you have any Black writers creating any of these shows? No. So they don't know how to represent the communities that they're not knowledgeable of. And there have it, you have all these design shows that have all white casts, and that's been handed down generation to generation. So fortunately, as you guys brought up, Broadway is starting to get it, and they're putting Black stars into some of these shows on Broadway. That needs to start trickling down into the community theater, regional theater world. And we need to start understanding that, hey, this diversity actually works. And we need to maybe do a better job researching how this can work and how this can represent the community. So yeah, so that's kind of a broad look at it. And obviously for Sara, you're so easygoing about this. I love it. You moderate this so well. But the reason why we're having this discussion is there's a huge problem. Like, we have a big problem. And it's been going on for a while. So this chat is almost like a huge red alert. Like, hello, we need to start mixing it up. We need to start thinking of reimagining and not sticking to tradition, because tradition has been whitewash. That is American tradition, right? So that's why we're really just trying to hit home to break these things up and think of other ways to represent different colors of people, different sexualities, different everything. Because they all existed, and they existed here, and they existed in Europe, and they existed in Africa, they existed, through the history of time, they existed. There's very few places where there was just all white people, everybody mixed in with everyone, so that's where people need to just stop, take a step back, and really look at what was there, who was there, who's not being represented, and why.
Yeah, I think it's to your point. I mean, especially these shows that take place in the Midwest. I mean, Oklahoma is about, it says it takes place in Claremont, Indian territory. Why would there not be any indigenous people represented in that? I mean, I think that's very interesting. They're on Cherokee land. How do you bring that into that narrative? I find
Right.
I find it fascinating discussion. Kind of a Leanne and Gary and I actually performed together in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and
Yes.
a very long time ago. I was the third girl on the right.
I'm 175 years old. Thank you.
But
And you look
again,
good.
that
Done.
that one too. It's like how, if those brothers were of indigenous, how does that tell this? How does that change the story of stealing some women in out of the town? I mean, it's just. I'm not saying that anybody would necessarily choose to tell the story that way, but you go, okay, what if? And I think, especially when you look at these traditional, and I'm going to use my air quotes, traditional classical. I need a better word for that. Theater pieces is just taking that. It does tweak the story. It can tweak the story and enhance the story as well, and being open both as an audience and a production staff, kind of looking at things in a broader light as well. I mean, after we spoke, when I was putting together that slide, I did go in and look at what indigenous tribes were around. In Seven Brides for Seven Brothers takes place in the 1850s, and they're on Klamath and the Umpqua tribal land. It's just kind of, very interesting if you added that dynamic in. Same thing with Iowa, with both the Music Man and there was another one of that. State Fair also takes place in Iowa.
State Fair.
It's very fun. Very fun.
Yeah, no, I
look
mean,
at that in that way.
Sorry, interrupting you. Yes, I mean, you look at any of these shows that feature railroads, right? Railroads and trains. Well, who built them? Chinese immigrants and Sikh. So now you brought in another nationality from East Asia, from India, Pakistan. So those folks were predominant in any city that was building a railroad. Why aren't they in the story?
Yeah. There's a couple questions in the chat, and I am seeing them, just so you guys know, and I am, we will come back, we'll circle back to some of them. But Miles had a great question here. What would you say to those, Gary, who tend to cast Judd in Oklahoma as Black, just to fit that servitude role? Because I see that done all the time.
Yes. Wow, I have so many things to say about that. Let me make it really short. It's extremely dangerous to put a Black person as the supposed villain of an entire white town. Like, we don't need any more of that, right? So I was actually cast in a production as Curly in Oklahoma, where there was a Black Judd and an all-white cast. And the city of Oakland rose up and made them change the casting so that there was a Black Curly and a Black Judd. And that's how I got the role.
Wow.
So yes, just because we're done with negative stereotypes of Black people versus the positive stereotypes of all the white people, right?
Right.
So that's the long story that I just made really short, but pretty much the point. Mm-hmm.
No, thank you for that. I really enjoy that perspective and bringing. Again, it's the simple fact of opening, taking off the shades or the narrow vision, and really widening it out and stepping back and going, what is this piece in the time frame that it's made? What does that really truly look like, instead of it being, this is the Music Man, it's Harold Hill and Marion, and boy, aren't they pretty. No, what would that look like? What would a traveling salesperson look like in that era? and there's nothing that says that it has to be one way or the other.
Right.
You know, again, that would be another interesting dynamic to play with. So we've got lots of questions, you guys, about
Ooh, nice.
kind of recruiting talent. That is something that SBMT in itself has been working on immensely since we've started our Readers Theater, and with the help of Vin, who's participating in the chat. Yay! We've done we've made progress. I will just say that we've made progress in our casting. There was a question about what about BIPOC stories for the talent, and you know, I think you're implying, you know, casting for talent. We are not having a problem of finding talented people of all races and color and ethnicities and non-binary, you know, they're out there. It is making, what we have noticed is asking more than anything is reaching out to your friends. When Nicole, Vin, and I were casting Almost Maine, they both stopped and said, you know what, we don't have enough options here, Sarah, we're going to delay a couple days. I'm going to reach out to a couple people. And Nicole ended up writing a small blurb about her vision for that show. Almost Maine, if you've missed it, is set in a little town called Almost Maine. And it is, again, there's nothing in there's nothing in the play at all that specifies race. And it was lovely, well done, and we're very pleased with the range that we've seen. The same.
We got an incredible amount of people for it too.
Yeah.
Like unbelievable. And thank you, Gary, for helping to spread the word on that one. So yeah.
Asking within your network to help spread that word too is so incredibly helpful and beneficial. Of going, hey, and here's the other thing: if any performers are out there and you're perhaps frustrated, I mean, for Almost Maine, we had 80 or 89 submissions.
I think it was 89.
For a cast of 18. So there's a huge range of people that we have to turn down. And it's so, no, I can already tell you that I reached out for certain people who didn't make it into Dracula to come and audition for I Am a Camera. Like, we are watching, we are taking notes, and we're keeping records of that. And we absolutely will keep you in mind for everything. Advertise auditions so you bring BIPOC talent. We have run into this when we return to live performances. One of the things that SBMT circles back to is we are in West San Jose, Saratoga, Campbell area, and bringing people here is something that's on our priority. I don't have an answer to it right now, but it's asking and really trying to pull, showing, you know, part of our philosophy is showing that we are open, that we are welcoming, and we're trying to use this time to build those relationships for certain.
It's a lot of it's organic as well. If you know, the efforts that you guys are putting in to initiate things, to let the Bay Area community know that there's opportunities here, you come audition here, we're really going to honestly consider you. People are automatically going to tell other people, and you're going to have streams of people coming in.
Yeah,
because they're all looking for opportunities. Everyone wants to build their resume, so they'll come down to East San Jose, you know. Yeah, it's a lot of it's organic.
Yeah, that's and it takes time. I think that's the other thing, is that it's patience.
Yeah.
You know, once we have 3 choices to each year. I mean, in a traditional season, we would have 3 chances to put on the best work that we can, and each time, you know, you're hoping that it gets a little bit better. So it just that takes time to build. This is a great question from Chris. We're doing a good job covering gender and BIPOC, but what about casting young or casting thin? There is definitely a social worldwide problem of the idealized body type. For both men and women, I would love to hear our thoughts on this.
Your costume designer cannot body shame people. If you know your costume designer has a reputation of body shaming actors, it makes your theater company look bad. Stop hiring these fat shaming people who have their own insecurities and projecting on us. Because I love myself. You cannot project your insecurity on me. Theater companies, please stop hiring these people. They need to be blacklisted. They need to go away. They need to put them in timeout. It is, we know what we say about each other. We know what it is. So it's our responsibility as directors, as producers, stop hiring these people. Oh my God, how many times was I fat shamed? How many times was I made to feel like my body was inappropriate? I was born this way. Like Gaga said, I was born this way. I can't change this. This is who I am. So for you to tell me I am wrong, inherently wrong, and they keep getting hired. They keep getting hired by different theater companies.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense. So
it was, you know, too. I'm going to go back to Tanika's Maria in Sound of Music. Sorry, West Side Story kept popping in my head. It's like, no, that's not the right show. But it would be a good example too of normally Maria is petite and delicate and that feminine ideal, and there's no reason that that needs to be that way. Again, bold, strong. The only show that really truly comes to mind as having a size part of the plot is Hairspray. And is there anything else? And I, you know, being Hairspray came out right when I was leaving New York, so mid 90s, right? I think late 90s. Yes. And I was a very heavy person growing up and remembered that to me, that was so inspiring to see Tracy, that role of Tracy Turnblad of like, oh my God. And they made her this sweet, wonderful girl who gets the boy. And it's like, it doesn't matter what we look like. And that's one of those stories that I truly love. The plot and the point of that production in particular.
Hey, Sarah, can I just chime in as a choreographer?
Yes.
You know, I'm looking for the best dancers. I don't care what size they are. Honestly. I mean, to be honest with you, you know, without kind of, you know, being virtuous in any way. The last thing that I choreographed was me and my girl at Jewel, and there was a woman of size who I said, you're going to tap dance and you're going to tap dance in the front. And the night of that show, she came up to me and said, no one puts me up front. I'm never up front. I'm terrified. And it's the greatest thing in the whole world. And I didn't know, I honestly didn't understand it until she said it. I just didn't think about it, but I also didn't understand what it meant. And it had a profound impact on me. I mean, she was fantastic. You know, it just had a profound impact on me that I didn't understand as a person who's kind of in the kind of regular area, how important. When I told her, now you're going to be up front for this section, she's like, really? You want me to be there? And yes, I want you. And how empowering that was for her, and how I should have known that better, you know, anyway. Right. But she was fabulous. So, you know, you fabulous, you go up front.
Yep. Can I respond? I see a comment that performers are fat phobic too. Absolutely. We're supposed to be a community. So, you know, why are you fat shaming your fellow actor? You know what? That's beyond me. Why we all need to take responsibility for this. It's not just costume designer. It is everyone. You know. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I will say, when I did Miss Saigon, it was incredibly refreshing to be around a group of women who were not all stick thin. We were in all different sizes, which I really loved. And my favorite thing during one break was like, one of the girls was saying, oh, like the only way I could really get rid of this tummy is if I had surgery, but where are we going for lunch? Like, it wasn't even an issue. It was like, I got this thing, I'm stuck with it, whatever, let's eat. And I think that's so healthy to me. It was so enjoyable because we were all in bikinis at one point in that show. I mean, like, if you're going to talk about being worried about your body image, that was a show to be concerned. But these women, it was so nice to be in a group of women who just, this is who I am, and this is who I'm going to be on stage. So let's go eat. That's how it should be.
Definitely being open to take risks. I definitely love. There's a and I hope, I apologize, Salim put into the chat too, performers aren't generally in a position of power to and what he's talking about is to bring attention to the fact,
to speak up on it.
To speak up. Go to your stage manager, go to your producer, please speak up. For SBMT, we have a policy, and I'm happy that is actually on our website. Our non-harassment policy specifically states that if you are feeling uncomfortable in any way, here's the order. Here's all the information on contacting myself and our board as well. If I'm the one who inadvertently says something, please. Well, first of all, you can say it to my face, and because I would appreciate the feedback.
But we do want to know. I mean, as a director, I want to know because half of directing is problem solving, right? Half of directing is trying to figure out how to solve this problem, how to solve that problem, and that's kind of what we do. So hopefully you can trust the person that's at the helm that is interested in making sure that you are heard, that you are seen, and that you can problem solve, that you can work as a collaborative team to make that to work that out. It would be horrifying for any director who left the show after it was all over and then heard afterward that all this had been happening and they couldn't do anything about it. So it's not a bother. You're not being a jerk. You're not, you're asking legitimate questions and have legitimate concerns, and that works for everybody.
Yeah, just a few other things that come to mind is just we are all created equal, but our hair is not, and our skin tone is not. So that really also affects your hair designer.
Yep.
It affects your makeup designer, and it affects your lighting designer. And we have a ton of those skilled folks who have no idea how to interact with different colors of skin, the different palettes of skin. And that becomes a problem as well, because now as a cast member, you have all kinds of problems with the staff, and it becomes the whole staff against you. You know what I mean? So that's why it's really important to put that skilled staff in place beforehand, so these problems don't, accumulate during the process. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why it's important, like you were saying, Sarah, like looking at that demographic of breakdown of like the directors on Broadway, to have more directors who are BIPOC, who understand these are the different either cultural issues or like dealing with skin, hair, whatever, all of these different things that maybe wasn't an issue before, is something that they can bring to light in a position where they can speak up for everybody. Because I think for all of us, because we all started as actors, we understand what it's like to be on that side, and to be on the other side of the table where we can speak up for everybody, I think helps to push everything forward, and to just help to educate everybody in a gentle way, so that it's not too jarring for anybody, and hopefully in a positive direction for everyone, where everyone can learn together, and in a safe place too.
No, excellent. So thank you guys for touching on that. Beautiful. You guys, we have just a few more minutes and then need to wrap up, but Eileen had a great question here. And I'll do my best to answer this one. How are licensing companies responding to the gender swapped casting? Are they relaxing more and more, considering theater is suffering right now? And the question is, some of the musicals, some of the contracts that I've seen have specifically written into them that if you cannot change gender on these characters, and anything has to be, or it needs to be approved by the New York houses.
Yes.
And it is an ongoing problem, something that we've talked about on our with our what we call this the CIA, my Community Inclusivity and Accountability Group, which is a group of outside, a couple board members and then outside advisors. We've been having conversations about how do we convince the rights houses to release some of these restrictions, to make it more accessible for so many. I hope with the movement that has been happening and this downtime, that they're also using their downtime to reflect on some of those policies that are in place that are just antiquated and out of date and need to be revisited. I think it would be great to start a letter campaign. Who's on that? Is anybody going to jump on a letter campaign to the rights houses to say, hey, it's time to release some of this? Good. A question for each of the panel members: what are your upcoming projects so we can follow and support you? Good question. Does anybody want to dive in?
Alphabetical, if y'all want. I just literally came from callbacks for my next show. It's called The Review, or How to Eat Your Opposition. And the playwright is a Black woman. Her name is Coretta Lavinia.
Grace.
Yeah, yes.
I know her.
Know her. And I'm also doing a youth play festival here in San Diego. I'll be directing 2 different plays, Program B, and then Rachel, which I'm really excited about.
Yay.
Yay.
I have nothing coming up. I'm open to any suggestions. No, the one thing that I am still doing is I'm still on tap to direct Men on Boats for Palo Alto Players.
Yay.
So right, I cannot wait. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, it's the story of the Powell expedition down the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon. It is told, however, through an entire team of 10 women, BIPOC women. Sorry, I take that back. Non-cis males. So, excuse me, because I'm very interested. I'm very interested in all casting possibilities. But it is written by a woman, which is one of the things that I think is really important for us to think about as we go forward. I mean, I love the idea of doing 1776 as all female, and I love the idea of doing Jesus Christ Superstar as all female. But what I really want is people to write for all genders and all races, and I want more of that. I want you to write those voices. I don't want to take someone else's voice. I want to hear those voices. And so that's why I'm truly excited about Men on Boats, because it is written in a voice that works for me. So and it's all very physical and choreographically exciting. So
it's a really awesome play.
I just put my plug in. Write the musicals. Write them.
On that note, I will just have to say, I'm just going to drop this little nugget of we are pretty finalized with having our playwriting workshop start. I believe it's February 8th, and it will run, it's a 4-session. So if you are interested in playwriting, please keep an eye out for that. I will also plug Leanne, who has agreed to do a fundamentals of choreography for us. So if you are interested in learning more about choreography, anyway, that information on both of those programs, as well as a couple more, will be coming out by the end of the month. It is a paid series, but we do offer scholarships for anybody that needs scholarships.
Just a quick plug. You're not a choreographer until you are.
Yeah, I will agree.
That's right. You know it.
All right, Nicole, Gary, do you guys have a Horizon stuff to plug?
I guess the one thing I have on the horizon is Allegiance. I'm going to be choreographing that for Palo Alto Players, and Vin Nguyen is directing, which hopefully is going to go up in June. So, and we were really excited about it because we cast it before the pandemic hit and we all had to go shelter in place. And we found some phenomenal people. And we are exceptionally proud of the fact that, speaking of everything we just discussed, a production team that is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vin, but I think all Asian American.
Yes.
So we're really, really excited about it. And so we're really hoping we can put it up in June.
Yay.
Okay, yes, it's true.
Right.
It's true. So yes, all Asian American production teams. So we're stoked.
Awesome.
Yay.
Yes, I just got through with directing and choreographing a production of Once on This Island.
Yay.
And that's with Sunnyvale Players. So go to sunnyvaleplayers.org for tickets. We open this Saturday. And we run for 3 weeks straight. Tickets are available every single day within those 3 weeks. Here or there, you can watch the show online. And we did everything at my house, the entire production at my house in front of a green screen. So there's lots of really cool post-edit production stuff that we did to the show with special effects and everything. So it's kind of like a one-of-a-kind, kind of a fun thing. So check it out. There's lots of different ticket deals and GoFundMe campaigns and different ways you can get tickets and share tickets and all that. So yeah, excited about it.
Check out. It's very exciting to see all of the work that's been gone into that, Gary. Just looking at theater live in a different way. I think is fascinating. So, and who doesn't love Once on This Island? Like,
yeah.
Oh, I love that show. Very, very cool. Thank you all for your conversation tonight. And I'm incredibly grateful for your honesty and candor, and being open to this discussion and kind of open of the mindset of looking ahead and seeing how things change. You know, there was a comment in the chat too, is does this become kind of a publicity stunt? Is Hello Dolly, an all black cast of Hello Dolly? I think actually if you look at it, it could be. Maybe somebody wants to do that.
It's been done before, actually. My mom grew
Pearl
up
Bailey.
on Cab Calloway and Ella Fitzgerald and all the biggest black artists on the East Coast doing Hello Dolly, you name it, all those shows is all black.
It absolutely could be, but it also could be just another way to tell that story from a different perspective.
Exactly. Exactly.
What you know, when I've been considering all of these conversations, you know, at the core of it is what we're doing is we bring stories to entertain, and we literally want everybody to come and see these shows. By having a better representation up on our stage, we hopefully will bring in more people who maybe would not, and maybe they can relate to what's going up on stage better than they would if there was not a diverseness and multi-genders and gender fluid on stage. All of that, we want as many people to come to theater as a community, and as much as we can get people to feel welcomed here. That's what the goal is. And if they walk away seeing something a little bit different in a different light, yay. That's the other best part of theater. So yeah.
Now you're cultivating kids of color to grow up to be actors in our shows.
And
when you get to that level, then you're really organic.
When you get at the core of it, what we're trying to do is further the next generations, because there's a quote that says theater's been dying for 4,000 years, and but we're gonna keep, but it hasn't, and let's keep it going. And I think the future is just being really open, really, really, truly open to whatever you might see. You may have a different opinion than the person next to you, but just remain open with a heart. So yeah, yay.
Yep.
On that note, I am going to officially say thank you. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank
If
you,
you would
everyone.
like to turn on your camera or unmute yourself and say a hi, we love that. I am just really blown away by you guys. I am super, super grateful. So thank you.
Well, thank you for putting it together, Sarah. This was a pleasure.
Yes, wonderful.